Good morning, folks. I don't know if anybody's on right now. Looks like I have 0 on the live stream. Well, there we go. There's some folks jumping on right now. Boom. Got my beautiful Wilson Combat Protector. Not sure if you can see that or not. Hey, good morning. Looks like we have about 12 people on right now. Live streaming, audio and video check. Looks like I am good to go. Trying to wake up. Happy January, what is it? Today, January 11th, right? January 11th, 2023. Kind of crisp outside, but dark. I tell you, I look forward to the time when the sun comes up a little bit earlier and the days are getting longer. Man, 26 people on finally. We got Dan on. Good morning. Era, hello. Chris from Vegas. I'll be in Vegas next week. John is on. Of course, IDPA's in the house. Tony Tiny. Pat is on. Good morning, Pat. How are you, sir? Charmaine, Dan, Claudia, James. Number 2, James Trumbley. Good morning, Massachusetts. Nice to see you. Hello, Jen. How are you? Francisco, good morning. Hey, folks, we got 35 live viewers on. My name is Mike Seeklander. I'm going to be your tour guide for today's live stream. And, of course, today's subject is kind of unique, and it's actually one that I have not covered in the past or for a long time in the past. Matter of fact, I don't remember the last time we did survival shooting. So the block of instruction we're going to go through today is called survival shooting. I call it the one-handed survival shooting block when I teach it in my defensive handgun spectrum. And it's all about one-handed manipulation. And the reason I call it one-handed survival shooting is because you are in a situation where you need to operate the handgun, whether you need to get it out of your holster or you need to clear a malfunction or do a reload with one hand only to survive the situation. Many years ago, when I was the lead instructor one of the lead instructors for the Federal Air Marshal Firearms Division, I was tasked with coming up with a program for one-handed only manipulation, because the assumption was, based on the intel we had way back then, that air marshals might get cut or stabbed, and they may have to operate in fights with their handgun with one hand. So that's what this block of instruction was about. So I grabbed back in the day, a SIG 229 and a bunch of dummy rounds and kind of hack my way through it. So we're going to try that this morning. We have a bunch of people jumping on. As you know, we always start with safety and always do a kind of a welcome to the folks that are on. Those of you that are on, we've learned about some Facebook algorithms that if you click that like button, that always helps us get in front of more people. So if you have a chance, click like. And also, please do me a favor and share this. So if you're a member of a group, I know we have a bunch of new groups on, a bunch of girls with guns and well-armed women and some different groups there. I know you're probably going to be on this morning, so share it with your chapter or your group if you would. And maybe if you're just a normal Facebook user, share it with your page, and that would be outstanding. Man, we have all kinds of folks on. Good morning. Tatiana Holly, is that right? Tatiana from A Girl in a Gun Nova. Good morning. Gerald, hello, sir. How are you? Joey Russo, great, man. Nice to hear you, man. I'm glad you're doing well. Drop me a text later today, Joe, if you get a chance, and if you want to give me some updates on that. I'd like to hear some details. I'm glad you're doing okay. Scott, good morning, Scott in Colorado. I hope it's beautiful there in Colorado. Mr. John from Yukon, Oklahoma. Hello, Jen. How are you? Oh, wrist surgery. Hey, I get pains and stuff, man. I have a thumb going on thing, so I'm going to be moving kind of slow today. Mr. Will Rhodes, good morning, sir, from Missouri. All right, folks, we got 44 people on. Let's talk about safety briefing. If you're going to work through some of the techniques that I'm going to teach in today's live stream, you got to have an unloaded handgun, and you got to verify you're going to comply with all safety rules. Now, I have a few handguns out here that I'm going to be showing off. This is actually one of my original Wilson Combat compact carry guns. This is a Wilson Combat Protector with a light rail on it. It's got an unloaded and cleared chamber, unloaded magwell. I also have a small M&P shield here, and if you look at the shield actually has a magazine in it with an orange tipped safety device. We'll talk about that in a moment. And we have a little red barrel in there. That red barrel is actually a Coolfire conversion kit. If you haven't heard of the Coolfire trainer, you got to check them out. This is a Coolfire trainer conversion kit that I have my Shield converter with. And I brought this for a specific reason because we're going to talk about the rear sight and gear here in a second. I'm actually wearing a Coolfire trainer converted Clock 19. This is one of my favorite little Clock 19s for classes, modified by Mr. Wilson Combat. And got the Wilson Combat slide on there. Of course, because I have the Coolfire trainer on the gun, when I pull the trigger, I get felt recoil, right? So I can work on actually pulling the trigger and resetting the trigger and doing stuff like that. So that's the Coolfire trainer if you haven't checked that out. So, of course, the Coolfire trainers can't be loaded. The only gun that can be loaded in front of me right now is actually this Compact 1911, and I have no magazines and no ammo. So do me a favor if you haven't done so. Comply with the safety rules. Make sure you understand all 4 primary safety rules. Make sure you're in a safe dry fire area. Check your guns right now. Please make sure they are unloaded. Check your magazines for ammunition. Make sure we are in a safe position to train. William Hollenbeck, good morning, sir. Alfred Balsanat. Not sure if that's the right pronunciation on that. Good morning, sir. Hey, Doug, how are you? Member 2225. Ruben is on this morning. Good morning, Ruben. Maybe the Amadors are all going to be on this morning. Nice to see you, man. Mr. Will Parker, Frank Wood from Arizona, Dan Schreiner, good morning. Good morning. Oh, safety. That's right. And Mr. Richard. Hey, how are you, Richard Sklar from Kansas? Nice to see you, man. Alan, good morning from the gun-free zone of Illinois. Good old gun-free zone of Illinois. I know your crime is like 0, right? Non-existent because it's the gun-free zone, right? Okay, let's get into this. So today what I'm going to be doing in the live stream, I'm going to have to step back so you get a camera angle where you can see my waist. Because we'll be talking about the draw and manipulation of the firearm with one hand only. A couple of principles, and those of you that are watching this that may see a question pop up later in the live stream, I would love it if you would repost the comment I'm about to give you for someone that may have a question that may miss this, someone that jumps on here in about 5 minutes. And that is that while I'm going to show a series of techniques for one-handed survival manipulation, there are other techniques that are just fine and work. The reason I teach certain techniques is because those techniques tend to have the highest success ratio for one-handed manipulation and the lowest safety conflict ratio. You know, there's less of a chance that if you have to use one of these techniques that you're going to flag yourself or drive the muzzle into the ground where there's some mud or some dirt or snow or whatever else. But understand, if you're doing one-handed survival manipulation where you're drawing the handgun with one hand only or you're manipulating the handgun with one hand only, things are pretty bad already. It's at times very difficult to practice these techniques safely without flagging yourself, which is why I recommend, you know, a red gun, a blue gun, plastic gun, SIRT type pistol, or a Coolfire trainer conversion. That way, if I make a mistake and I flag myself, I know I'm flagging myself with a firearm that can't be loaded and can't be fired, right? So that's my goal. And then I can take that same technique that I made a mistake on and I can work through it with more reps or better reps so I'm safely doing this, okay? Everything that we're going to do today is going to be nice and slow and deliberate. I'm going to be talking through the process quite a bit. So please, if you have the opportunity, follow along. And if you just jump on the show, welcome. My name is Mike Seeklander. We're talking one-handed survival manipulation. So the first thing that I want to talk about very, very briefly before we talk about the draw process, sorry about that, folks. I'm bumping my microphone here, is the aspect of making sure that your gear is right for this technique. So basically, when you select a carry gun, you know, if you were to read through my defensive handgun book, a carry gun would offer a few things. I have an acronym I use called REAP in my book. It stands for reliability. The gun has to be reliable, right? 100% reliable. Ergonomics, which mean that I have the ability to reach the controls. I can hit the mag release. You know, I can manipulate the safety. In the case of this M&P Shield, it has a very, very small, low-profile manual safety on the side of the gun. If you have the ability to manipulate that, that's great. But in, like, for example, today is a great example because I have a thumb injury, and actually, apparently I can still do it. I bent my thumb backwards the other day in jiu-jitsu, and I realized that the thumb is not supposed to bend that way, right? And I'm having some hard time moving it because it's so stiff, it's so sore. Maybe I have a small fracture in there, I'm not sure. But ergonomics means I can manipulate the gun, right? So really, reliability, ergonomics. The third is accuracy, right? The gun has to be accurate enough to defend at whatever distance I may be defending at. And most common guns are more than accurate enough. Like they all almost shoot more accurate than you would ever need in a defensive encounter. And the last P stands for power. So reliability, ergonomic accuracy, and power. 9mm or above is my preferred caliber. And the last thing oftentimes I talk about in terms of a carry handgun is the ability to manipulate it one hand. I say one-handed manipulatable, if that's a true word or statement. Sometimes that becomes a tongue tire, right? And what I mean by that is if you look at the rear sight on this shield, for example, this is the stock rear sight that came on the shield back when I was carrying shields. It has a ramped rear sight, right? And the ramped rear sight is not a bad rear sight. It's a metal sight. It's not like some of the plastic sights you find on some of the production guns out there. But the problem with a ramped rear sight is there's no forward ledge to work the slide off of. So if I wanted to do a one-handed manipulation off of my belt, right, or the corner of my pocket, I have nothing to hook that gun on, right? Contrast that with something like this, the Wilson Combat, right, where the Wilson Combat has a little bit of a ramped rear sight. Now, in this particular case, this is a fixed rear sight. So it's a little bit more robust. I do prefer a fixed rear sight on a carry gun with iron sights, assuming that I can get the gun zeroed from my defensive ammo and my carry ammo. A fixed rear sight is going to be a little bit more robust. It'll have less failures. And in terms of one-handed manipulation, that's a key. Now this has a, almost a little shelf on the front of the sight. So that allows me to take that same handgun, right? If I need to manipulate it off my belt, I can hook it on my belt and I can work that slide and manipulate it with one hand only. So when I look for a carry handgun, I look for something that is one-handed manipulatable, right? Big words. Now, with an optic, and today is the day of the optic. We're talking about carry optics and handgun optics and optics on defensive handguns. You may say, well, Mike, is it wrong to manipulate the gun slide, the firearm slide with the optic? And no, if you have a robust mounting solution, a good plate, good screws, the right slide cut or right, situation in terms of your optic mounted solution, you should be just fine. And in this particular case, with this optic, I will work this optic, which is a Delta Point Pro, off of my holster or my belt or a steering wheel or my hand over and over again. Now, eventually, with enough force, this could be problematic, right? This could be a situation where, maybe I might rip that optic off the gun or I may break, but it shouldn't break. In most cases, you should be able to do lots and lots of one-handed manipulations by using the surface of your optic. But it's also a good reason to look for an optic that has a very robust window and robust protective shroud on it. In the case of the Leopold, they have the inner portion of the optic and they have the outer portion, which is metal, which is pretty darn strong and takes quite a bit of abuse. I put this particular optic through a lot of abuse. I also have an RMR on a small SFX9 carry gun that I've done a bunch of one-handed manipulation on, and that's very effective as well. Okay, so that's the number one rule is check your ability to manipulate your firearm with one hand. Whether you have an optic on it that you're going to manipulate the gun with, or you have a rear sight that has some sort of a protrusion or a shelf on it or whatever else like this rear sight, because it needs to hook on something. And oftentimes when I go to a class, I will have students show up for this one-handed manipulation type class, and they'll try to manipulate their handgun and realize the ramped rear side of the gun is not effective. Okay. Now there are some companies out there that make purpose-designed one-handed manipulation rear sights. The first one that I ever owned actually was made by Dawson. It was the Dawson Charger, I believe. Not sponsored by Dawson, but they're a good company, and they made some great sights. Later on, I started running the Battle Hook made by Henning Wahlgren. The Battle Hook is a fantastic rear sight made for one-handed manipulation, very robust, and he makes entire front and rear profile sights that you can look at as well. I know that Rob Pincus did a deal a long time ago. I think it was called the Claw. But there are 3 or 4 companies that make rear sights that are designed for one-handed manipulation. Now, I'm not a fan of manipulating off the front sight. I know there are some schools of thought where the guys will come down and they'll manipulate the gun off of the front sight. I don't like that because oftentimes it's done on the heel of the boot. If I'm manipulating with the front sight, that means I'm putting whatever I'm manipulating on, whether that's my boot or my belt, very close to the muzzle. So for me, the front sight is not a great option to manipulate the handgun. The rear sight is the better option for me, okay? So there you go. Check out your firearm setup. Hey, we have a bunch more folks on. Looks like, hey, good morning, Angel from Puerto Rico. Alan, good morning. Oh, I said good morning to Alan already. Sorry about that. Greg from Portland, Tennessee. Good morning, sir. How are you? Donald Rutledge. Hello, sir. How are you, man? So a good question. So Pat asks, since we're talking about one-handed, how much consideration should be given to how or where you carry your gun? Can you access a firearm while it's in the holster with either hand? So that's a great point, and we'll talk about that when we start the draw process. When you're looking at one-handed manipulation, remember, it's not maybe a technique or a series of techniques that you hopefully would do in a commonplace, right? That would happen on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, in my entire history of teaching, I think I've only met maybe 1 or 2 people that had to do some sort of wounded shooter or one-handed manipulation with a handgun. It's very rare, and they're both in law enforcement. I have never heard of a civilian having to do that. However, it's a situation where if you already have a base level of skill and you haven't played with some of these techniques, you probably should. So in your mind, you know for a fact, I can manipulate my handgun and survive this situation. You want to talk about a cool one-handed manipulation scene and movie, by the way. If you haven't watched this, The Way of the Gun. If you haven't watched The Way of the Gun, you got to watch The Way of the Gun, by the way. It's a cool movie. But they have a fantastic scene where these guys are getting shot up and they have to do some one-handed manipulation. Some one-handed manipulation techniques I'm not necessarily sure I would approve of, but they're pretty darn cool. By the way, we got 65 live viewers on. If you're part of the 65 live, I'm going to ask you while I take a sip of my coffee to click the like button for me. Click the like or the love real quick button for me. That's going to tell Facebook maybe to show me off to some more folks. And maybe if you feel so inclined, hit the share button, share it to your wall, share it to a group, share it to my groups if you haven't done that. Pretty pleased. Hey, Wine Man from Italy. Good morning. How are you, sir? Wine Man from Italy. Mike Cahill from Montana. Good morning. How are you? Gil from, I'm not sure where, Jackson. Good morning, sir. How are you? Hey, Johnson City's in the house. Kimberly Bowman Sims. Good morning. Fort Pierce, Florida. Kip. Good morning. How are you? Howie is in GM 2255. Hello, sir. Okay. So let's get into this. Hopefully our numbers climb. I would love to beat 100 live viewers today when we're talking about one-handed manipulation. So let's talk about a few things. And by the way, if you're just showing up, make sure you double and triple check you have unloaded firearms. And let's get into the technical aspect. What I am going to do is I am going to adjust the camera angle down a little bit. So when I'm kind of close to the camera, I may be cutting the top of my beautiful, incredible, sexy head off. But that's okay because now you can see what's going on down here. So let's talk about the draw process. Now, in terms of where I carry it, and I think Pat mentioned a second ago, the position you carry your firearm and where you carry it will affect your ability to do one-handed draw processes or manipulations. And my suggestion, if you're doing this today with me, or maybe you're gearing up later, is to do it and try it. And you're going to find that the best way to figure out what is good or what is bad about your carry system, the carry gear, is to simply practice this. Now, all of these manipulations, just like today, can and should be practiced dry fire or cool fire. I have a cool fire conversion on, for example. You shouldn't go to the range and do these things live fire. Maybe ever for some of you, maybe most of you should practice these dry fire for a long period of time until you're really good at them. Matter of fact, I don't let students do these techniques live fire until they've had dozens of repetitions dry fire only. Okay, so let's talk about the draw process. Now, when I'm drawing a handgun, most of you that have watched me teach before know that I'm going to reach inside the garment. I'm going to sweep the garment with my strong hand. So let's address that real quickly. I see so many folks on the internet do these well-intentioned but maybe misrepresented speed draws from appendix, and they're practicing their dry fire reps, and they're sitting there, they're kind of creeping to the handgun, to the shirt or whatever else, and they do a rip and grip, or they rip the shirt out of the way and they grip the handgun, right? So they're ripping with a support hand, gripping the handgun. And it's a rip and grip, because the process of the fact that I'm moving two hands at the same time is a very fast draw, right? But for those of you that have watched me draw, you know that when I draw the handgun, I am going to use my strong hand, my right hand, to sweep the garment. Now, when I actually draw, I reach down and grab the garment, I sweep it out of the way, I assist with my support hand and draw the handgun out of the holster. And by the way, my draw and everything I do today will be kind of deliberate, because I want you to be able to watch the technique. And I'm not going very fast today because I've jammed my thumb up. I said that earlier. So I'm kind of slowing the process down, which is probably good for you. But I'm drawing the handgun with the strong hand sweep. So I'm grabbing the garment with my strong hand. I may assist right here with my support hand, right? So now the support hand is holding the garment out of the way while I index and build my grip on the holster. But I can take my support hand, put it on top of my head, and still sweep and grip the handgun just as smoothly and efficiently as I can with two hands, right? So there's really no difference in the technique in terms of the draw, because I spent so much time sweeping the garment out of the way with my strong hand. So when we're talking about one-handed manipulation, the whole concept is you only have one hand. Maybe this arm is tied up with someone, and when we're talking about one-handed survival shooting, we have to address why we are doing that. Why are we drawing with only one hand or manipulating the handgun with only one hand? And it's because the other hand is either injured or it's occupied. So if I'm occupying this hand by maybe pinning a guy up against a vehicle, or I have an arm wrapped up, I only have this hand to draw the handgun out and fire with, right? So the first one-handed manipulation that I want you to go through or consider is strong hand only draw process. If you are a ripper and gripper, I'm not saying you're wrong, right? And I'm going to put this out later on the Instagram. I'm not saying you're wrong, but if you don't have the ability to switch it up and draw with only your strong hand, I would consider that to be wrong, because you may be in a circumstance where this hand is tied up. A very common one might be using a flashlight, right? Where I have to use my flashlight to illuminate the threat, and I can't use that hand to draw, right? So there's your first tip. Learn how to do a strong hand only draw process by sweeping the garment with your strong hand, right? I would strongly consider you investigating that. Okay, so we've drawn this the handgun with the strong hand only. I'm reaching inside. By the way, if you have an open front garment, the technique doesn't change a lot. I would reach inside a jacket or an open front garment. I would sweep and wipe that out of the way, and I would index wherever the gun is. So, for example, my gun happens to be in the appendix position. If your gun happens to be strong side, the technical aspects of the draw, the principles are very much the same, right? They don't change a ton, right? So I'm reaching inside the garment. I'm grabbing it. I like to reach inside the shirt. There are some folks that are actually just grabbing the shirt itself and ripping it out of the way. I don't find that to be as consistent. So I'm trying to get my hand up inside the shirt here. Once I do this, I don't release this grip. And I'm going to draw a big C around the handgun. I'm going to attack the gun from the rear. I'm going to build my grip, and then I'm going to fire those shots. Okay, so that's my strong hand only. Okay, so now let's contrast that with my support hand. Now this hand is injured, cut, shot, banged up, or whatever else, and I can't use this. Well, how do I draw with this hand? And I'm going to give you a few different methods. One that is my favorite, and then two is options. The first one is One, it's going to feel kind of funky if you're doing this standing, but you'll understand what I'm talking about, okay? So my technical aspect of drawing with the other hand, if I were to reach inside and sweep with my strong hand, I'm going to do the opposite with my support hand. I'm going to reach on the other side of the gun. I'm going to sweep the garment out of the way, and I'm going to drive my hand straight down to the gun. Now, when I do this, this is critical you pay attention to this. When I grab the handgun grip, I'm always grabbing with a 4-finger grip on the grip of the handgun, like this. I do not grab the handgun like this. If you grab the handgun in the holster like this, it's likely as you pull, you may have a finger slip inside the trigger guard. That's going to be bad for you. If you reach down and address your grip, remember, this is one-handed survival shooting, so we're injured or we're, things are really bad. You're probably really amped up. You got a very high stress level. But if I grab with 4 fingers like this, right, it's unlikely those 4 fingers will go inside the trigger guard, right? So I'm grabbing with 4 fingers. I call this a 4-finger grip, right? Once again. So I've reached down. Normally I sweep like this. I'm doing the opposite. I'm going to reach down. I'm going to sweep the garment out of the way, and I'm going to attack the grip of the handgun, grabbing with that 4-finger grip. At that point in time, and I'm going to give you 2 primary options. I'm going to take the handgun out of the holster, right? And I'm going to pin the gun between my knees. Now, when I do this, I'm taking what we would call the teardrop muscle of my knees and pinching on the slide itself. So I'm taking the handgun, right, and I'm placing it with the muzzle down and away between the teardrop muscles of my knees, and I can switch my hand up, and then I can build a good shooting position, boom, 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 and fire my shots. So once again, and I apologize for the sound variations. This is an example of my stationary microphone right there having to try to pick up the sound when I'm back there, but hopefully you can hear me okay. So once again, let's do this. So reach down, sweep the garment out of the way, big deliberate sweep, attack the gun, 4-finger grip on the handgun grip. Gun comes out of the holster. If you looked at my muzzle direction right now, it's away from my body, okay? I want to keep the muzzle away from my body. The gun comes around my body and my knees. I'm going to pin it between my knees, switch my grip, attack the gun from the rear, and fire my shots, right? Okay. Once again, when my gun is in this position, you should be able to see this. My muzzle is this direction, and then I can drive the hand up, I can build my grip, and I can fire my shot. Okay, I call that the knee method. The reason I show you that is because maybe the people in passing on Facebook see that and realize, hey, that's a good technique. I can use that. It's the most efficient and easy to pull off for most shooters that haven't practiced this stuff a lot. The second one I'm going to show you is what I call the holster method. It's kind of unique. There are some additional risks to the holster method, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So for the holster method, I'm going to reach in. I'm going to sweep the garment out of the way. I'm going to grab my 4-finger grip, 4 fingers on the grip of the handgun. Now, you got to pay attention to what I'm doing here. When I come out of the holster, I'm going to take the gun, get it slightly away from my body. I'm going to turn the gun around, and I'm going to shove the muzzle just barely inside the holster. So now the holster is helping me secure the handgun so I can rotate my hand, I can build my grip, and I can get into a good shooting position. Okay? So I call this the holster method. Once again, let me holster this back up, nice and safe. And when I'm doing this for you 57 lovely live viewers, notice that I'm making every attempt to keep the muzzle off my body. We're doing a one-handed survival technique because things are really bad. Is it possible you may cover your body with the muzzle? Yes. Matter of fact, if you're bending over or seated in a vehicle and you draw a handgun from the appendix position, you just pointed the gun at your body when it came out of the holster. You cannot avoid that, right? But we're trying to keep the muzzle off our body as much as humanly possible. By the way, let me see if I have anybody on here that has potentially asked a question that I need to address. And Donald, you're welcome, sir. Jim, thank you for the sound check. I appreciate that. The Den of Houghton Lake. Good morning from northern Michigan. The Den of Houghton. That sounds like a cool place to visit, actually. You're going to have to tell me more about that. Jim, try the sport hand draw. Good. Please try that in your dry frost session later on, sir. That's exactly right. We did actually, Mr. Morales, if you've heard the original FBI shootout in Florida, a lot of the stuff that we talk about in terms of being able to survive a situation when you're injured was applicable in that particular circumstance. By the way, I told you I met two people that needed this. The second one was actually a motorcycle officer that pulled up to a scene of some situation. I'm not sure if it was a car stop or what it was. And a guy got out of the car and shot with a shotgun and nailed him right in his gun sight arm. And he lost the ability to use it, which basically paralyzed the arm. And he did a support hand draw and shot the guy. Okay, so don't be aware of that. Okay. All right, so here we go. So let's do the holster method one more time. Then I'm going to give you one more kind of unique technique, and then we're going to talk about manipulating the handgun, and we'll open up for some Q&A, okay? So once again, the holster method. I'm going to reach down. I'm going to grab the garment. I'm going to do a big deliberate sweep, get it out of the way. I'm going to grab that 4-finger grip on the holster. This is critical. All 4 fingers go in the grip of the handgun. Gun comes out of the holster. I'm going to keep the muzzle away from my body, push it down the holster, switch my hands, build my grip, and then fire my shots. And by the way, I am using a Coolfire trainer. So if you were dry firing with these techniques today, I could build a good sight picture, I could stabilize the gun, and I could pull the trigger. I could watch what my dot or my sights are telling me because I have a Coolfire conversion kit in my handgun. Okay? The last one I want to talk about is what I call the roll method. And you're going to roll the handgun across your chest. I would caution you, most of you should probably never do this in live fire until you're very, very practiced or well trained with it. I will tell you there are certain some muzzle direction downsides to it, and this is not a technique I would use standing. This is a technique that I have had students use very effectively in classes, but this is the technique I would use if I'm laying on my back. Of course, I can't lay down on my back for the live stream because you won't see me down there. So understand that if I were laying on my back, this is the technique I might use. And it's called the roll method. So I'm going to reach down, once again, sweep the jacket or garment out of the way, grab my firearm, 4-finger grip on the handgun. Then I'm going to take the gun and I'm going to press the rear side of the optic into my chest. And while I do this, I'm going to roll the gun into a good grip, and I'm going to build my shooting grip on the handgun itself. Once again, I want you to watch this. Understand, this takes a higher level of dexterity. Standing is very difficult, but if you can imagine, I'm shot, I'm laying down behind a vehicle, and I can't get to my knees for the knee method, then this is a method I might use. I would literally pin the gun to my body, keeping my 4 fingers together, and I would roll into my good shooting grip, and I would fire my shots from there. I call that the roll method. It is my least favorite. And please, if you're just jumping on this last minute and watching this going, who is this idiot rolling the gun across his chest? Rewind the video and watch the rest of it because there's context behind it. So that's the roll method itself. So there are 3 methods, processes I just showed you for the draw, okay? Number 1, sweep, grab the handgun, 4-finger grip, knees, build your grip, fire your shots, okay? That's the knee method. Number 2, grab the garment, sweep, 4-finger grip, turn the gun to holster, reposition, build your grip. That's the holster method. And then number 3, the roll method. Grab the garment, sweep, 4-finger grip, up to my chest, roll the gun across into a good grip, and fire my shots. That's the roll method. Those are the 3 draw processes that I teach for one-handed manipulation. All 3 of them can and should be done in as safe as manner as possible and in a way where you are paying attention to your muzzle direction. Okay. By the way, 62 live viewers. Live stream numbers have been down recently. We used to hit 100 on a regular basis, so I don't know what's going on there. Donald says, you give a like and an angry emoji pops up? That is weird. Maybe that's why, once again, Facebook and social media throttling me back. Welcome to life, right? We're going to fix that very soon with a new live fire app. All right, so I don't see any questions on that. So I want to really quickly talk about manipulation of the handgun itself, right? So in order to do any given manipulation, I'm going to have to do a few things. So to clear a malfunction, I'm going to have to probably put pressure on the magazine in the gun, tap, and I'm going to have to manipulate the slide. So let's address the manipulation process of the slide. By the way, in terms of the Coolfire trainer, they come with these little orange tipped, they're not dummy rounds. They're basically, I don't even know what they're called. I think Bill Rogers invented these things. But they give you the ability to take your magazine, put it in the gun, and you can cycle the slide, and the slide doesn't lock to the rear. So for the Coolfire trainer, I can pull the trigger and the slide keeps cycling, which is pretty cool because now I have a magazine in the gun, which means I can practice my loads, right? So to do an emergency reload, if the slide was locked to the rear, right, I would have to drop the magazine and grab a new magazine and do a load, right? That's with two hands. So how do I do an emergency reload with one hand only? Well, dropping the magazine from the gun is the same process, right? I pivot the gun in the hand. And by the way, this is something that you need to have a skill. You can use your support thumb to do reloads. A lot of students ask me, Michael, can I use the support hand to press the mag release? I can't do this very well. And I say, yes, you can, but understand if you're ever in a circumstance where this hand doesn't exist, you're going to run into trouble, right? So I simply release the magazine with my hands, right? I just did a little pivot in my hand, right? Now, the question is, where do I put my gun for this reload? Because my right hand is the only hand I have. This hand is gone, right? I'll put this guy in my back pocket, right? Well, for you concealed carriers that are covering your gun with a concealing garment, the holster is not a great method because it's very hard for me to shove my gun back in the holster if my t-shirt or my garment fell over it. Now, if you're a law enforcement guy, you can very easily holster that gun up in your holster. Matter of fact, I recommend the holster method because it is going to be the best position to put the gun for the load. For me, I will have dropped the magazine, and then I'm going to use that same position that I use in the draw process. I'm going to pin the gun between my knees. Muzzle is down and away. I'm going to reach up. I'm going to grab my new magazine, and I call this the ice pick grip, right? And then I'm going to insert that gun, magazine the gun, reestablish my grip. And now here's the point where I'm going to manipulate the slide. So I'm going to take my handgun, and I'm going to find the spot that works the best for me. So for me, my appendix position holster right here, oftentimes I find myself catching the belt right behind the appendix position of the holster, right there, right? So I grab the gun, I'll put my hand back away here, right? And manipulate the slide and let it go forward, and then I'm right back into the shooting. Right? Boom, 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 I can fire my shots, okay? So once again, let me lock that to the rear. By the way, for 62 of you live viewers, I just want y'all to know I am sacrificing today by pushing in this mag release because this is extremely painful. So you can say, thank you, Mike, for sacrificing for our live view and free education. By the way, single thing I've ever taught in my classes, pretty much without me coaching you because I can't see you right now, I've taught Livestream at this point over the last 6 years for free. So I'm trying to do my part and make people better shooters and better defensive shooter, right? Here we go. We're in a fight. We only have one hand. Put this hand wherever you want to, right? I'll put it back in my back pocket, right? My slide lock to the rear. Release the magazine. Secure it. Holster for you duty guys, maybe police officers. For me, between my knees. Teardrop muscle. Good position. Don't shove the handgun too deep between your knees, right? Reach over, access the magazine. Got my ice pick grip. Insert the magazine, and then work my slide, and then I'm back into the fight. By the way, when you're working your manipulations, I always tell my students as we're doing these drills, try not to get task fixated down on the gun for too long. Consider this. If you're doing a one-handed only manipulation, you're in such a bad circumstance that you recognize you have to get the gun back in the fight. You're probably not within contact distance of the threat, because if you were and you've got a boogered up gun, you just start probably fighting with the gun and punching with it or whatever else. So you have some distance. you have some time. These one-handed manipulation techniques require some time, right? Understand when you're doing them, though, you are in a fight. So if I am, let me grab my magazine. If I'm in a circumstance, right, in this fight where I go and I release the magazine out of the gun, right? Come on, get out of the way. And I get down here, and now my head and eyes are down here the entire time, and I'm messing around, and I have no awareness of what's in front of me. I have no idea what the bad guy's doing because I'm fixated down here. Instead, get the gun down there and get your head and eyes up. I can reach out and grab my magazine. I can feel the gun with my head and eyes up, and I can manipulate it and get back into the fight. So don't get too task fixated on the gun itself. Try to remind yourself as you're doing your dry fire drills to get your head and eyes up in the fight. Find the threat. Know, are they still hunkered down behind the car over there? Where are they? Are they approaching you? Is it time to go hands-on? Is it time to run to a better position or a different position or whatever else? Okay. So, hey, Tina's on this morning. Good morning, Tina. How are you? And I appreciate you sharing with Girls of the Guns, Low Country, in Beaufort, South Carolina. All right. To the slide, I saw the regular follower. That's exactly right, Scott. So if you looked at Scott's question is the dummy follower. On these, it's hard to tell the difference, but there's an orange dummy follower on top of my normal orange follower. So this, what the slide does is that slide has the ability to freely travel back and forth and it won't lock up. So it allows you to practice those dry fire techniques. And good morning, Sarah. How are you? So Jack in Florida, please mention the pull out and up on the garment. Craig, talking about the garment out of the way. So I think what Craig's talking about is the deliberate sweeping aspect of the garment itself, right? So when I am pulling my garment off with either the strong hand or support hand, it is a big, deliberate sweep, not just up, but out from my body and up. So I'm really working on getting the garment completely swept. Now, if I switch that to the other hand, I'm still taking the garment out and away from the gun. It's a very big sweep. And the reason I'm doing the sweep is I'm going 4 fingers are making contact with my body, and then the thumb travels down to the gun. It prevents the garment from getting in my way. If I do the opposite, same thing. Big sweep, 4 fingers, and then I'm pinning the garment up with my thumb, which allows me to reach down and try to avoid most of the t-shirt or shirt entanglement. And then, of course, I grab my 4-finger position, 4 fingers on the grip itself, grab the handgun, build my grip, and fire my shots. So that's the technique that Craig is mentioning, and make sure you pay attention to that. Good morning, good morning. And Sarah, you're welcome for sacrificing my thumb. That thing hurts a lot. It was really swollen up the other day, like really bad. It's not as bad right now. Let us see what else I have as far as question. Gilly says you got to go. Have a great day. Go to work. Have a nice day, man. I appreciate you coming on. And Francisco, I appreciate you saying that. Just some minor technique consider. I charge the gun used in great position. So in terms of what Joey's talking about, the technique Joey's talking about in terms of charging the firearm with your teardrop muscles is actually something that I was taught and learned to an extent at the Rogers Shooting Academy. So they do some one-handed manipulations in the Rogers Shooting School. And when they get the gun into the teardrop area, I'm not sure if the camera will pick this up, it should. They're grabbing, these are the teardrop muscles of your knees, right? So they're grabbing the slide with the teardrop muscle of their knees. So when you get to this position, you can manipulate the slide with the teardrop muscles of your knees. I would tell you, for most of you, unless you're as practiced as Joey is, you might have a failure. I've seen more failures in that technique, in that when we're trying to grab the handgun and we're manipulating the slide, right? As we're pushing the slide to the rear, the pants, the material in the pants get caught up in there. And if you don't do this perfectly, you'll grab the material of the pants and that will jam the gun up badly. Most people have trouble manipulating the handgun between the teardrop. It may save you a step in the process, but I would strongly caution you to try that a bunch and know that you can do it with whatever pants you're wearing or shorts. I actually was wearing shorts the first time I learned that technique, and it doesn't work at all with shorts. Believe me, your body won't hold on to a hot gun. You tell it to, but it won't do that. But be aware of that. So Joey, good technique. But once again, the reason I don't teach that one at this point in time is because it was a failure point of my classes. I saw too many students that were short stroking the slide or that were catching part of their pants in the ejection port area itself, and then they would rip the pants or have a serious malfunction. So just be aware of that. So Donald, have a great day. You got to take the kid to school. I understand that. Jan, you saying I work on my southern accent? I could turn my southern accent on. Maybe not. So and Greg, I appreciate your comments there. Really do. Okay. Gerald says, I hope I bended the guy. No, the truth is the guy didn't actually bend my thumb back. It was me and the guy rolling and training, and it got caught in an armpit or a shirt, or I'm not even sure where, but it is actually, I think, a little black and blue there. It probably is broken. Who knows? Okay, great. Tina, I will check my email today as well. And Mr. Mike Tilley, this is a Coolfire trainer conversion kit. So it comes with this is actually the Coolfire trainer barrel and recoil spring. So I took Glock 19, I put their barrel in, and then I put the recoil spring in. And of course, the round here prevents the slide from locking to the rear, but allows me to charge it up and pull the trigger. When it runs out of gas, it does that. And then I simply take a Tipman paintball canister. And by the way, they're a sponsor of our podcast and me, so you can get a discount code, a small discount code on the American Warrior Show podcast page. So then I can cycle a slide and I get felt recoil, right? So that's the Coolfire trainer conversion. If you haven't checked that out, okay. All right, let me see if I have anything else. All right, I don't have a lot more time, folks. It's 8:20 right now. We talked about one-handed survival manipulation. I showed you the draw processes with both your strong hand and your support hand. I also showed you a way to manipulate your gun, right, off of your belt, is where to put it if you have to do a load. The last thing I want to mention very quickly is how do you fix a malfunction? Because if you're all tied up and you're wrapped up with someone and you're trying to shoot close quarters and you touch a slide or whatever else, you stop the slide from moving or pin it with your thumb, there's a very good chance you'll have a malfunction. So if I were fighting someone physically tied up or maybe close range and I can't use the other hand, whether I'm fighting close range or at long range and this hand is dead, how do I fix a malfunction? If I got a click instead of a bang, how do I fix that? Well, my recommendation is your normal tap rack will be done on your body. So if I'm going to do a tap rack with two hands, with one hand, I'm going to find a location that is close to where I'm going to rack. So for me, I said my manipulation point was right behind my holster. So I'm going to go tap, rack, and then clear the malfunction. I want you to pay attention to the angle, though. When I'm tapping, the muzzle's away from my body. I maintain the muzzle direction position, and I rack all the way through to fire the next shot, right? What I don't want you to do is tap and have the muzzle up next to your body. If you have the muzzle up next to your body like this, you will catch the garment in the ejection port. So the muzzle has to be down and away. You can see the distance between the gun and my body. So with my strong hand, right, tap, rack, fire, right? And if I'm working with my support hand only, I'm going to use the opposite side. Tap, rotate and rack. Notice how the muzzle's down and away. Work through the slide position and fire my shot. Okay? Once again, tap, rack, fire my shots. Okay, so there you go. There's your malfunction clearance process. The phase 2 malfunction clearance is a little bit more complex, but the process is basically the same. Maybe we'll cover more of this in the future if you want to. Hey, before I forget to mention this to Tina and some of the other folks on, if any of you are going to the SHOT Show next week, I'll be in town with Team Livefire, who I am now working for part-time. By the way, shout out to Team Livefire. If you're not on the Livefire app, please check it out. I'm telling you, we're going to offer some features and some things you can do on that app that are going to be new to the shooting community and very unique. It's the ultimate firearms training app and social media tool. It's really, really a premium product. So check it out on the Apple Store or Google Play. But if you're going to be in SHOT next week, I'm going to be there with the Livefire developers. So come see us. Come say hi. Wednesday. Just find me at the SHOT Show. Big, bald-headed guy with goatee. Can't be hard to find. I'm hard to miss, right? And say hi to me as well. I'd love to meet you at the SHOT Show. Okay. And Francisco, looks like Mr. Scott did that. Coolfire Trainer. If you go to coolfiretrainer.com/Seeklander, coolfiretrainer.com/Seeklander, you can find a discount code, or go to AmericanWarriorShow.com. There's a discount code. I think it's AWS22 for your discount code for the Coolfire Trainer. I'm not sure. And all right, folks, that's all I have. Hey, thank you for joining me today. Today was kind of a unique subject. Let me give you a little bit more of a closing camera angle here. I've been trying to cover some different things. We talked about shotgun just recently. We did shotgun 1 and shotgun 2. We did some one-handed survival shooting. I know some of these aren't as spicy as like a really fun competitive draw process. We're going to ease into that as the year gets going. Probably in February, we'll start some of the original challenges where we're not just instructing, or I'm not just instructing, but we're all putting on gear. If you want to join me, whether that's your defensive handgun or your competition handgun, and we're working on our draw, we're working on our reload. By the way, the Get Your 50 concept, I call that Get Your 50 Reps, is on Livefire as well. And very soon, we're going to reshoot all of those original dry fire follow-along programs. So there'll be half a dozen dry fire follow-along programs where if we're saying, hey, get your 50, maybe that's 50 reps of practice if you can go to your local indoor range or outside and shoot a little bit, but maybe it's 50 reps of dry fire, but get your 50 in. Tina and I were talking about this on our meeting the other day. Get your 50 reps of practice, put the effort in, grab your gun and handle it on a daily basis, and that'll also be on the Livefire app. So if you see this later on and you jump on there, give me a follow, and I'll follow you back and send me a message, because if you don't follow me, then I won't see your posts and I won't see your training logs. Okay. Kip, thank you very much. Brian, thank you all. Have a great day. Joey, it's nice to hear from you, man. Take care. And Tina, for Robin and a girl and a gun, I will reach out to her. Maybe if that's not in that email, maybe you would send an email if she's not on this morning, which I don't think she is. We will meet up with her. Absolutely. Okay. Frank, going to buy a Coolfire for a Glock today. You'll like them. They're great tools. You're going to have these things all over the place. There's some other solutions as well, but they're certainly a great tool to train with, to get that trigger process. So anyways, folks, have a great Wednesday night. Have a great weekend. SHOT Show next week. I hope to see you there on Wednesday. Stay safe. Work these skills, right? If you're going to do one-handed survival manipulation, it's really bad. The other hand is injured or the other hand is occupied, and it's not a skill that you have to wish you had. If you're in that circumstance, please don't wish you had that skill. Know you have the skill and you have the ability to survive the circumstance. So give it a shot, put some practice reps in, and until then, folks, train hard.